We are very excited to continue with what we believe is going to be not just an eye-opening but a very entertaining session with Rohan Chakravarty, who is not only going to take us on a unique journey into the natural world, but also solve a nature crime scene where hopefully we are going to exert some of those gray cells while at the same time being tickled by his humorous medium, cartoons and comics. Rohan, I warmly invite you to please come up on stage. I'm just going to read it. Rohan Chakravarty, notorious for rolling up into a ball like a pangolin. I had to Google what a pangolin is. I had no idea what a pangolin is. But Rohan is notorious for rolling up into a ball like a pangolin to avoid meeting people. He is an illustrator and creator of Green Humor, a series of cartoons, comics, and illustrations on wildlife and nature conservation. Cartoons from Green Humor appear periodically in newspaper columns, magazines, and journals. Illustrations from Green Humor have been used for several projects and campaigns on wildlife awareness and conservation. Rohan is also the author of Green Humor for a Graying Planet and Naturalist, Ruddy, and has won awards by UNDP, WWF International, the Royal Bank of Scotland, the Bangalore and Green Literature Festivals for his work. And now I hand over the session to you, Rohan.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, and thank you, Mary, and your entire team, the entire team behind Shillong Lit Fest, for having me here. It's my first time in Meghalaya, and I'm really excited. My only regret is that I did not become a singer. I wanted to become a singer once, and comparing the audience turnout to that of the very talented band, I do have that one regret. Anyway, so what I'm going to take you through today is a very interactive kind of a session for which I would like all of you to come join me in the front, because we are barely, 20 people, and it involves a lot of, you guys teaming up with me. So if I can please request all of you to come occupy the front seats, that will be really helpful for me as well. Okay, I guess I'll have to do with whatever I have. Anyway, so I'm a cartoonist, I draw about wildlife, and there's this character I've created called Naturalist Ruddy. Naturalist Ruddy thinks of himself as a detective, and he goes about solving whatever he observes in nature as crime scenes. Alright, and I'll tell you why. I am a bird watcher. I'm a hobbyist bird watcher. I love to travel to new places to see birds, and I keep a count of all the species I'm seeing. How many species I've seen in my life, how many species I've seen in a particular year. So I'm kind of obsessed with this. And something happened in 2020 that stopped me from this entire endeavor, from traveling to, in search of birds. What was that? We were all locked down in our houses, right? I'm sure you have good memory. COVID. That's a pangolin sneezing upon Xi Jinping. So, COVID happened, I was locked down in my house, I couldn't travel in search of birds, and I was forced to explore my own surroundings instead of traveling to new places. And I thought as an observer of nature, as a bird watcher, I knew my surroundings like the back of my hand. But COVID proved me wrong, because I was looking not just at birds, but also a lot of insects, even bats, and I discovered new things. There was this pipistrelle. It's a kind of a bat, a tiny bat that eats mosquitoes, that was roosting in my house, that had escaped my observation and knowledge completely. Then there were two kinds of grasshoppers, there was bees, there were dragonflies, butterflies, moths, all of which I discovered from my own house, with some help from two of my pets, Shrishti, Sakshi, their names are. They are two beautiful indie dogs who I adopted from the streets, and they love digging. They love digging up the garden, and when they dig, earthworms come out, little skinks and lizards come out. And all of these discoveries I made with them. So if I ever write a scientific paper, I'll have to credit them as Srishti Sakshi et al. Anyway, so so yeah, all of these new discoveries presented themselves like mysteries to me. And I thought if I want to tell my audiences about these discoveries and about little critters, the best way to do it would be through a detective. So yeah, I started cataloging all of these creatures. These are creatures that I have discovered from my own house. Okay, and I urge you to be observant of your own surroundings, and you'll find at least half of these in your own living spaces as well. So there are moths, there are butterflies, dragonflies, and wasps. This is just an incomplete list to give you an idea. So yeah, back to naturalist Ruddy. You've all seen mongooses? Great. So naturalist Ruddy is a ruddy mongoose who's always ruddy for adventure. The word ruddy refers to the color. The mongoose species is named after its color. Ruddy is rusty red. All right. And now we are going to join him in unlocking some of the most fascinating mysteries in nature. So what exactly is a ruddy mongoose? There are 6 species of mongooses in our country. If you travel to peninsular India, anywhere, the commonest species would be the grey mongoose. I don't think you find it here as much. And if you travel across the Terai, all the way from the Gangetic Basin to Arunachal and Assam, you'll see the small Indian mongoose, which is the smallest species of mongoose in India. Then there's the ruddy mongoose, which looks a lot like the grey mongoose, but grey mongooses are found all over urban environments. Ruddy mongooses restrict themselves to deciduous forests. So in central India or in the southern part of India, those are the best places to see the ruddy mongoose. And how do you identify the ruddy mongoose? With the rusty red color and the black tipped tail. All right. Then if you go to the Western Ghats, you see 2 species of mongooses that are only found there in all of the world. Those are the striped-necked mongoose and the brown mongoose. And then in the northeast, there occurs the largest species of mongoose in India, which is the crab-eating mongoose. And like all you northeasterners, it loves to eat crabs. Now, where does naturalist Ruddy live? This is a map of Kanha Tiger Reserve. Can anybody in the audience tell me where Kanha is? Which state of India or which part of India? Yes? Madhya Pradesh, very good. And Kanha is famous, well, not for naturalist Ruddy yet, but it's famous for, of course, it's famous for tigers because Madhya Pradesh abounds in tigers. Kanha is a tiger reserve, but it's famous for a particular kind of deer that's only found in Kanha and nowhere else in the world. Can anybody tell me what the deer is? What the deer is called? It's the hard ground Barasinga. You'll not find it anywhere else other than Kanha, and now it has been translocated to another tiger reserve called Satpura to establish a satellite population. So if you look closely at the map, you'll see the Barasinga, you'll see the tiger, and somewhere right next to that peacock over there, you'll also find the ruddy mongoose. This is what a ruddy mongoose actually looks like. I'm a really bad photographer, so don't go by the pictures. It's a very pretty animal. And if you take a close look at it, it's got a bright red nose. And what you see at the bottom is what its natural habitat looks like, what the natural home of naturalist Ruddy looks like. So yeah, naturalist Ruddy is a detective, or at least thinks of himself as a detective. And to go about doing his job as a detective, he has certain tools that come to his aid. A pair of binoculars when he's looking at birds or butterflies. He uses a notepad. One peculiar thing about this notepad is, which is not mentioned in the book, is that it is made out of elephant dung. That's what people actually make notebooks out of elephant dung these days, and that's what the texture of the notebook looks like. And he of course uses a camera to record whatever he's observing. He's got a laptop. I know he's a mongoose, he's not supposed to be using these things, but this is a comic book. Now, naturalist Ruddy is a bit like me. He's a mischief monger and has a lot of bad habits, which I'll tell you about later. But one of those bad habits is that he steals camera traps. Can anybody here tell me what a camera trap is? You can raise your hands and answer my question if you know what I'm talking about. I'd really like the kids to answer, or the young people to answer here. Yes. I'm sorry? Lovely, yes, nanny cams for wild animals. So, what scientists do is they disguise these cameras. They're very well concealed. They're colored with camo patterns, and scientists tie them around trees. And if a tiger or any other animal or even a human being passes by, the movement of that animal triggers the camera to capture a photograph. That's why it's called a camera trap. And by analyzing camera trap pictures, scientists know what kind of animals exist in a given habitat. If there are instances of poaching happening in a particular area, poachers get caught on camera traps as well. And that's how conservationists come to know that there is poaching activity in a given area. And because the mongoose is a solitary animal, much like me, does not like the company of others of its kind, Ruddy's most trusted aid is his hat, which he calls. You all read Sherlock Holmes, right? Are you fans of murder mysteries? I mean, Shillong offers such great backdrop for murder mysteries, right? So yeah, Ruddy's hat is called Hatson after Watson from Sherlock Holmes. And sometimes he relies on some of his friends to solve mysteries he can't crack himself. One of which is a white-rumped shama. It's a bird, it's a species of robin. And in the book she's called Dr. Shama. She's a molecular biologist. Fun fact, the white-rumped shama is one of our most melodious birds in India, and anywhere in the forest of the Northeast, you can expect to find this. And any Agatha Christie fans here? I see a few hands. Okay. Then you know about Hercule Poirot. This is a butterfly called the red Pierrot, and it's a very common butterfly all across India. And this Pierrot butterfly dresses up like Hercule Poirot and calls himself Herschel Pierrot. So he's a friend of Ruddy's, and whenever Ruddy gets stuck in insect-related cases, he consults Herschel Pierrot. All right, before we proceed, we have to remember one important warning. That is to not touch any wildlife unless we are certified wildlife biologists or mongooses. I am neither, and I'm sure neither of you are. Mongooses can afford to touch snakes. Why? Because mongooses are immune to snake venom. If I touch a snake, I might die in the if I don't get antivenom. But when a mongoose is bitten by a cobra, it only gets dizzy for a fraction of a second, and then it goes about happily eating the cobra as if it were a piece of noodle. All right. Now, what's going to happen is there's going to be 3 crime scenes in nature in front of you. I want all of you to take very close look at all of these pictures and then help this mongoose solve those crime scenes, okay? People at the back won't be able to read much or observe much, so I really request you to come occupy the front seats, because you need to pay a very close look at all these images to understand what's happening. Okay, thanks so much. So when the next image comes on screen, I urge all of you to just observe what's happening in the images. I will read out later what's happening, and I'll give you 4 options to tell me what you think is really happening in the picture. Are you ready? Just observe the sequence of images. All right. So naturalist Ruddy has been observing 2 insects perched on the lush green leaves of a vine. One is a shiny, metallic and iridescent. Iridescence means a metallic sheen, like you see on the surface of cars or metal. An iridescent jewel beetle. You see the jewel beetle? And the other, a dull green leafhopper. An Indian robin, which is the bird, flies in looking for a meal. Ruddy's obvious guess is that the bird would go straight for the jewel beetle. Why? Because it is so much more prominent, because it's shining. But to his surprise, the bird catches the dull green leafhopper, which is hidden so well because of its camouflage. It's colored like the leaves. Why do you think the robin has hunted the leafhopper and not the jewel beetle? We have 4 options. A, because robins just love challenges. B, because the robin wants to confuse Ruddy. C, Because the jewel beetle's shiny colors warn the bird that it is toxic. Or is it D, because the iridescence or the shine actually enhances the beetle's camouflage against lush, glossy leaves? Okay, how many for A? Nobody for A. Where's your imagination? B? Anybody for B? Nobody for B. C? Oh, majority for C. Anybody for D by any chance? 1, 2, 3, 4 hands. You're right. If I didn't know much about the jewel beetle, I'd also have guessed C, because that's what a lot of insects do. They advertise loud colors. They advertise their toxicity to their predators by sporting loud colors. If you see a bright orange colored butterfly, you can be sure that the butterfly is toxic to eat for birds or for small mammals or even frogs. But the jewel beetle is different. The metallic shine you see on the beetle actually helps it conceal itself among dewdrops. Or if sunlight is shining on the surface of a leaf, it enhances the beetle's camouflage because of the shiny colors. And I've had the good fortune of actually observing this. I had once spotted a jewel beetle in my garden in Hyderabad, and there was dew in the morning hours, and in the blink of my eye, I lost it. I lost the beetle. The camouflage is actually that good. All right, crime scene number 2. Please observe what's happening in the image. Don't read. I'll read the whole thing out to you. Take a minute. Observe everything that is happening in the image. All right. On a scorching summer noon at Boar Tiger Reserve. Boar happens to be India's smallest tiger reserve. It's got some 7 or 8 tigers right now, and it's just about 40 kilometers from my hometown Nagpur in Maharashtra. Naturalist Ruddy's search for a cozy spot to nap in. Another trait that Naturalist Ruddy and I share is mandatory noon naps. Okay. So Naturalist Ruddy's search for a cozy spot to nap in brings him to the mouth of a tiny cave. But Ruddy cautions himself against entering the cave when he spots the remains of a deer strewn around its entrance. You all see the remains of the deer? Whoever killed the deer must be resting in the cave, naturally. Now, only a large predator, the size of a tiger or a leopard, is capable of hunting an adult male sambar deer. How does Ruddy know it's a sambar? By the shape of the antlers. The curves you see are peculiar to the sambar deer. Fun fact, the sambar is India's largest deer. An adult male sambar is taller than me. Okay, so imagine the size of the animal. So it's clear that only a tiger or a leopard is capable of killing it. But the entrance to the cave is barely 2 feet in diameter. Which animal capable of killing India's largest deer could be less than 2 feet in size? It's a bear, but how can a bear get into a little bear? Okay, reasonable guess. Owl? You think an owl can kill this big an animal? I don't know, it might. I'm asking you. Yeah? Python. Python is a good guess. But can a python eat a 6-foot animal and expel the antlers like that? Alright, let's find out what's really happening, okay? Ruddy takes cover behind a boulder and keeps his eyes glued to the cave's entrance. The culprit is certainly a crepuscular creature. Crepuscular means active at dawn and dusk. You've heard about diurnal animals, you've heard about nocturnal animals. Crepuscular ones are active at dawn and dusk. So the culprit is certainly a crepuscular creature to have disappeared in the cover of the cave's darkness during the day, Ruddy assesses. At dusk, a snout emerges. Ruddy can barely contain his curiosity. The deer hunter is seconds away from disclosing its identity. Ruddy and I have another common trait, which is to utter cuss words when we are surprised. Bad habit, I know. Holy snakes! An Indian crested porcupine. Ruddy was right to guess that the cave's occupant was a crepuscular animal, but completely wrong in his assumption that it had killed the stag. The porcupine is a vegetarian. What business does it have killing deer? Let's find out. The herbivorous porcupine has a habit of picking bones and antlers from dead bodies to later chew them and supplement its diet with calcium. Any vegetarians here? That's what you need to do to get your calcium. No, I'm kidding. There's lots of calcium supplements for human beings. But this is what animals in the wild do to get their minerals, herbivorous animals. You've seen deer at salt licks, right? Deer licking salt off the surface of the floor. That's what they do to get their minerals. The porcupine goes a step beyond and steals bones and antlers from carcasses to later chew them and supplement its diet with calcium. Ah, my fans have come, finally. Care for some crunchy antlers, offers the porcupine. But Ruddy is a carnivore like all of us here, most of us here, so he doesn't really require calcium supplements. And so Ruddy declines the generous offer politely, but not before uttering some choice words at the prickly rodent for ruining his noon nap. Okay, we'll let this procession pass because the next crime scene is the biggest crime scene of the day and it needs really careful analysis from all of you. Or I'll just get to the image and let you observe and then we'll talk about it. Alright, most complicated crime scene of the day. I need you to look at every single element in the picture and then we'll discuss what's happening. Okay? Alright, 3 questions come to mind. What exactly happened here? You see blood, you see drag marks, so something was killed. What was killed? If something was killed, somebody is the killer. Who was the killer? Okay? Any guesses? Yes? Yeah. Okay, fantastic. That's okay. Let's discuss who the murderer was first. Any guesses about who the murderer was? Snow leopard is a reasonable guess. A bear, yes. Alright, let's analyze this a bit better because Sherlock Holmes said something very profound. Guessing is a shocking habit destructive to the logical faculty. Means that guessing is the enemy of common sense. So let's be analytical detectives and solve this whole mystery step by step. First, the wildlife map of India. This is an illustration that gives you a rough idea of what wildlife to expect in what kind of terrain, in which corner of India. So where exactly do you see snow on this map? In the northeast, west, south? North, right? Yes, in the north. Also, if you go northward from Sikkim or Arunachal, you are likely to encounter snow. So all of these are the mid to upper Himalayas. Alright. So we know that crime scene has taken place somewhere in the Himalayas because Ruddy is an Indian animal. Okay. So the suspect obviously is a carnivore that occurs in the Himalayas. We have a roundup of 10 suspects. These are the common carnivores that occur in the Himalayas. There are 2 species of bears, the black bear and the brown bear. 4 kinds of cats, the snow leopard, the common leopard, the lynx, the Eurasian lynx, and the Palesis cat. 2 members of the dog family, the red fox and the Tibet. Hello? 2 members of the dog family, the red fox and the Tibetan wolf, and 2 weasels, the mountain weasel and the yellow-throated marten. Weasels are a lot like cats, but very elongated cats. So somewhere between a cat and a mongoose. Now, let's go back to the crime scene. You see Ruddy's tracks? You see Ruddy, right? So his tracks are the ones that follow him. The killer's tracks continue after the blood marks. But the prey's tracks have stopped there. Which means that the hooved mammal, you see the hooves? Top left of the screen, you'll see hooves. The hooved mammal has been killed. Now, another clue is that a brawl took place. How do we know that? Because we see drag marks. So, if a brawl has taken place, it means that the hunter and hunted were more or less the same size and strength. Why else would they need to fight then, right? We also see drag marks of the blood and drag marks on the snow, which means that the prey was dragged and not carried. If a snow leopard killed a rabbit or a hare, it won't have to drag the quarry, right? It would just carry it in its mouth. We won't see marks. But the prey was dragged here, which means that it may have been large or heavy. And the most important clue in the crime scene now is that the killer's tracks are almost the same size as Ruddy's in size. You all know how big a mongoose is roughly, right? About this big. About this big. Okay? So can it be a snow leopard? We know from the tracks that the animal is more or less the size of a mongoose. Maybe slightly bigger, maybe slightly smaller. Can it be a snow leopard? Okay, let's do one thing. Let's round up all our suspects again, do a size comparison with the mongoose. Then eliminate suspects one by one. Alright. So, first the two species of bear. A Himalayan black bear. Can all of you hear me? Alright. Is that one better? Am I standing at the right place? Should I? Okay. So a Himalayan black bear is about this tall when it stands, and a Himalayan brown bear even taller. A mongoose is this much. So I think we can safely eliminate both the bears, right? Out of the 4 cats among our suspects, only 2 can be compared to the mongoose's size. One is the lynx, one is the Pallas's cat. So we can eliminate the snow leopard and the leopard. So there goes our favorite guess. 2 members of the dog family. Only the red fox can be compared to a mongoose's size. It is slightly bigger. The wolf is much bigger. You know how big a normal Indian stray dog is. So the wolf is much bigger than that. And among the weasels, this is a bit tricky because the Himalayan weasel, even though it looks a lot like a mongoose, it's a really tiny creature. If you leave the tail out, head to body is about the size of my foot. It's really that tiny. But it's a ferocious hunter. Alright. Nevertheless, its pug mark cannot be compared to a mongoose's. It is bound to be much tinier. So the one suspect among the 2 weasels we are left with is the yellow-throated marten, a very pretty looking carnivore. You'll find it all around the jungles of the northeast. And it's known to kill animals much larger than its size. So out of the 10 suspects, we are now left with 4. The red fox, the lynx, the Pallas's cat, and the marten. Now, how many of you think it's the fox? 2 hands, 3 hands, 4, great. How about the marten? Okay. How about the lynx? And Pallas's cat. I think I counted most hands for marten. Well, you know, we are horrible detectives because we've missed out the most important clue. We missed out the most important clue, which is that claw marks are missing from the tracks. If you see Ruddy's tracks, you'll see little claw marks at the tips, but those claw marks are missing from the killer's tracks. What does this indicate? Run your grey matter. Why? You're close, you're close. Yes. Cats retract their claws when they walk. Right? You've all seen house cats walk, right? If you go look at the tracks, you'll never see claw marks. The claws only come out during a hunt. That's exactly what the cat has done here. Only when the hunt has happened, the claws have come out. Nowhere else do you see claw marks, which rules out the fox and the weasel because they do not have retractable claws. So we are left with 2 cats now, the lynx and the Pallas's cat. Now to pick the correct culprit out of these two, we have to first analyze what was the animal that was killed. We saw markings of hooves on the snow, which means that the animal that was killed must have been a kind of a mountain goat. Now these are the mountain goats that occur in the Himalayas. The ibex, which is about this big, the Himalayan tar, which is about this big, the sero, about the same height, the goral, about up till here, a tiny mountain goat. The bharal, about the size of my hip, and the Tibetan gazelle, also around the same size. So, going by the size of the tracks, who do you think was killed? The goral, very good. Now, if you compare the sizes of these two cats with the goral, the Pallas's cat is about the size of your house cat. The lynx is about the size of my knee. Which one do you think has killed the goral? Very good. If you are ever in Ladakh or the Tibetan plateau, please look out for the Eurasian lynx. It's a handsome looking cat, characterized by those lovely ear tufts on the top of its ears. And it's a ferocious hunter. It won't do anything to you. It's scared of humans as much as you are of wildlife. But yeah, it's a very ferocious hunter. It takes prey as big as pheasants, as big as, goral. Even the young ones of big mountain goats are fair game for this cat. So yeah, before I leave you to ask me questions, what if Naturalist Ruddy came to Meghalaya, stole a camera trap from a scientist working here, and came across this strange pattern? What animal do you think Naturalist Ruddy has seen? Sorry? That's right, your state animal, the clouded leopard. You're a very sharp naturalist. What's your name? Anisa. Very good. So, Naturalist Ruddy is a comic book full of such kinds of adventures. There are about 39 such crime scenes or cases in nature that you are required to solve alongside Ruddy. And when you go about solving these cases with him, when you go about discovering how nature works with him, I will hope that you get more interested in the inner workings of the natural world. How many of you write letters still or postcards? Oh, I'm surprised to see young hands rising up. Wonderful. So Naturalist Ruddy comes with 2 free postcards at the end of the book, both of which pay tribute to crime classics. One is Vertigo by Alfred Hitchcock, and one is Chinatown by Roman Polanski. Both of these are, classic detective films. I'm sure none of you have heard about them because they are from the 60s, but I love those films. And these are tributes to both these films. And you can cut these postcards out and write postcards to your friends. A little bit about how Naturalist Ruddy was created. As a child, I always feared mathematics. I drew comics in my textbooks, in my rough notebooks, and the plots of these comics would involve aliens coming to my school and abducting my teachers. And obviously, I was the hero because I am drawing the comics. So I would come and rescue all my teachers and leave the maths teacher out. So yeah, that's how much I feared math. But when I became a cartoonist, I realized that math is everywhere. Even as a cartoonist, I cannot escape mathematics. So to get the proportions of my characters right, I have to rely on the X and Y axis and various rules of symmetry. Because in comics, these characters have to be reproduced over and over again. So you have to have a sense of formula. So that's how Naturalist Ruddy is broken down into simple shapes and created over and over again. And to be a cartoonist, you also have to be a good actor and a little crazy in the head because, when I'm drawing these expressions, I always have these expressions on my face, actually. And when people see me at work, they are very inclined to ring up the mental hospital. How I became a cartoonist, I have to thank this tigress. She was the first tigress I ever saw in the wild, and she sparked the idea of a series of, wildlife-related cartoons in my mind. And I saw this tigress at Nagzira. Nagzira is a tiger reserve in Maharashtra. And the rest of my work is actually cartoons on wildlife conservation, some of which look like these. It's called Green Humor, and you'll find it in a national newspaper paper called The Hindu, and in two of my books, Green Humor for a Graying Planet and Pug Marks and Carbon Footprints, both of which you'll find at the bookstore. Thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed joining me and Ruddy on this ride. And if you have any questions about my work or any suggestions for me to be a better artist, I'd be very happy to take them from you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rohan. Does anyone have any questions before we carry on with the next section of the same session? Does anyone have any questions for Rohan?
You're making this really easy for me. Come on. Okay. Let's give them a break.
Okay. Rohan, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was not only entertaining, I think we really used those gray cells, right? We were also thoroughly entertained, and more than anything else, I think you've inspired us all, young hearts and older hearts and minds as well, to explore with curiosity and humor the natural world around us. I think that's so important to get it out of that very textbookish context. I'd like to now invite Nishant, a research affiliate at Conservation Initiatives, to come on stage for a conversation with Rohan. Please have a seat, yes. Conservation Initiatives is dedicated to science-based conservation of threatened wildlife and their habitats, and to sustaining positive human-nature relationships into the future. Based in Northeast India, Conservation Initiatives focuses on community-based conservation, nature-friendly rural livelihoods, and other participatory approaches to facilitate the coexistence of people with wildlife, including, in particular, the Asian elephant and the Western hoolock gibbon. Did I say that right? Nishant is a research affiliate at Conservation Initiatives, interested in GIS mapping and landscape ecology. In his free time, he writes about nature in the city on his Instagram handle, Trees of Shillong. Trees of Shillong. Thank you. I hand over now to you, Nishant and Rohan.
Thanks. Thank you. It's such an honor and pleasure to be here. This is my first Shillong Literary Festival. I've been here for 2 years, and so thank you, Mary and team, for having me here. That was a very wonderful session. I'm sure audience here are inspired by the
Whatever's remaining of them, yes.
the inquisitiveness and the curiosity of Ruddy, and are inspired to go out there and see what nature mysteries are around them. So conservation biology, the term, was described as a crisis discipline by Michael Soule. He's regarded as the father of conservation biology. And he said it has a crisis discipline because it involves mostly very bleak and somewhat serious and important issues, which are dealing with things like habitat loss, biodiversity loss, and things like that. So I, as a conservation biologist, on behalf of my colleagues who work on ground, would like to utilize this opportunity to extend my heartfelt thanks to Rohan for all the work he does through Green Humor in shining light on such very important issues in a way which is such a unique medium, which is cartoons, which are infused with wit, humor, such that for the reader it is quite easily understandable and relatable, and the reader comes off with a sense of like, not only do they get information, but also they come out with a sense of I guess intrigue and inquisitiveness about nature. So thank you so much for that, Rohan.
You all do all the hard work. I just convert them into cartoons.
So I encourage the audience to utilize this opportunity and ask Rohan any questions if they have. Is there any questions? Okay, I get.
So we should have guessed, but I guess we were not clued in enough. Did you hear what I said?
No,
I said you're already wearing that little picture of the lynx.
It's a red panda,
Oh,
actually. Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's fine.
Uh, I guess if
Rohan, thank you so much for being here. You know, I'm a
Thank you,
fan of
Mary.
your work.
Thank
I
you, I'm
know
honored.
quite a few children who are a fan of your work. I was just wondering, you know, because it was just so fun and educative. Have you taken this, or have schools invited you to be part of their curriculum?
Recently, NCRT has picked, I think, 9 of my cartoons for inclusion in NCRT textbooks. I don't know how soon that will happen, but I've received a confirmation. So I hope you get to see my cartoons in the NCRT textbooks.
That's wonderful to hear, because I think that one, you know, like the 30 minutes with you was like, I don't know, for me, I felt like I learned so much about the environment, and I'm sure many people will also agree.
Thank you.
So yeah, I hope that we see you actually as part of the school curriculum.
I hope so too.
Yeah. May I ask, sorry if there's no other questions?
There are no other hands, don't worry.
Okay. How did you start, and why comics?
I'm an introvert. I'm a caveman by instinct. I don't like direct interaction with human beings and the outside world. So naturally, a drawn method of communication comes as second nature to me. I've always drawn cartoons, but never really, in my youth or in my childhood, never really found any found my feet as as an artist, because I tried various things. Like I told you about the aliens and my teachers. I tried several other storylines. I used to copy a lot from artists who I grew up admiring, and that's how one thing leading to another helped me develop my own style. But it was after that tiger sighting that the idea to merge two of my primary interests, cartooning and wildlife, came to my mind, and it was only after that that I found a sense of direction for my art, and that's how I started to take this line of cartooning seriously and develop it into the series that you see today.
How long ago was that?
Well, Green Humor formally started in 2010, and its print run began in 2013. So I guess it's been 10 years now, or a little over 10 years. Yeah.
And may I ask, because I know you through Instagram. I've been following you for a while, and that's how I know you. I've been following the work, and I think a lot of people know you through Instagram, your Instagram account, actually much more than your book. I bought your book much later.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I'm
no,
not gonna-
I bought your book much later.
Ah.
Yeah. I just want to understand, because is there a larger community that you've reached because you're on social media? Do you think?
Sadly, I have to say yes. These are how things work in these times. But yeah, whatever you see on social media is actually work that I've done in the print. I'm pretty much still a print media artist, and that's something I've aspired to be, because all my idols have been in the print. It's just that in recent times the space for print is diminishing, space for cartoons in the print is diminishing. So the internet and the cartoonists are yet to figure out what to do with them with each other. But yeah, I think things are taking some sort of direction. But yeah, I think the internet is yet to be a fully productive and fair space for artists like me so far. It's not, the internet doesn't help us monetize our work directly, and that's something that needs to change. But Instagram definitely has helped me gain a lot more outreach beyond print, because a lot of the very interesting commissions with organizations abroad have resulted because of my online presence.
Thank you. I have many more questions, but I'll leave
Alright.
it to someone else.
Okay, now we are talking.
Hi, Rohan.
Hi.
Similarly, like Kong, I have also been following you on Instagram for quite a while.
Thank
so
you.
good to meet you in person.
Same here.
So just two questions to be specific. First one, who is your biggest audience? Because like she was correctly mentioning, do you have a bigger community who your content reaches out to? And secondly, because the kind of content you create is quite vocal. It's against pollution, it's against environment, it's against creating awareness like to the larger folks. So who receives your content well and who doesn't? Because some government, they wouldn't be happy. Like,
Right.
so
So first question, I think the audience that I interact with most is, or at least have meaningful interactions with, are my newspaper column readers. Because they, even when they are critical of my work, which they quite often are, the feedback is very constructive. You know, I think people who read my work in the newspapers actually analyze the details and write back to me, you know, about things they liked, about things they disliked in a particular comic. And I kind of prefer that interaction to social media trolling, where any entitled person with a smartphone comes and proclaims me stupid or an idiot. So that happens a lot in a country like ours with very polarized opinions about politics and therefore about environmental issues as well. So, and that brings us to your second question. Yes, a lot of you know, backlash happens. A lot of I'd say criticism that is not constructive happens on social media, and over a period of time, you grow a thick skin like the pangolin, uh, and you learn to ignore, you know, anything that is not constructive. Yeah.
Yeah, hi Rohan.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you, how do you break down such complex climate issues into a fun, understandable series of comics? Like,
Right.
because sometimes it's so complex, there are so many things involved. So how do you decide, and what's the process basically? That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
So when I deal with climate change or you know, heavy science in my comics, I usually do a lot of reading. Thankfully, there's really good science communication happening in India these days. Lots of new journalists are doing groundbreaking work in communicating science creatively. But still, there are a lot of articles. I think the ones that appeal to me the most, the issues that appeal to me the most to draw comics about, are the ones that put me to sleep. You know, so those are the ones I take up as challenges, and that's what I would like more people to care about as well. So the simple approach that I follow is that if I am able to retain and understand the issue after reading my own comic, my audience generally would too, because I generally consider myself dumber than my readers. So, and I think that approach has worked so far, because I've never had people telling me that a particular comic has been too complex to understand. Maybe it has fallen short of being funny, which is all right to me, because not all of this communication can be funny. It's not a conventional comic strip where, you know, it's a man and his cat and they're yeah, complaining about Mondays and, you know, all that. It is a bit more complex than that. So I give myself the freedom to not be funny sometimes, but be concise and put my point across as effectively through humor as I can. And I think humor is a very important tool in this endeavor, because I always say this, you know, humor or satire is like a slap on one cheek and a kiss on the other. So, so yeah, even if a harsh point is being put forth, it softens the blow. And that's where humor always comes to my rescue.
I have one quick question. So this is on behalf of the parents and educators in the audience. So how does one inculcate a sense of curiosity and scientific temper among children and young adults? As a science communicator, what are your thoughts and experiences?
Two things that come to my mind looking at Ward's Lake: more walks in nature and more stories, and both of which are right here. And I think the more of these that can happen as part of curricula, as part of even home learning, I think the better it is to inculcate a curiosity and a respect for the natural world among younger generations who experience a lot of disconnect from nature these days because of technology. Yes,
Hi,
sir.
Rohan. Two quick questions. One is, do you see this genre catching on? The green crime fiction, detective fiction, as one would call it. That's one. The other is a slightly more serious one. Is because you referred to it in your answer to an earlier question, is what's your view on the freedom of the situation with freedom of expression? Because that is a real critical issue in this country right now.
Am I allowed to talk politics here?
It's not politics.
No, no.
It's
I'm kidding.
everything.
I'll answer your question.
You're speaking.
Yeah.
That's part of the freedom of expression.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I won't consider this as a genre as such. It's cartooning, and it's just another theme or another topic that cartoons address. But yeah, I think there is some good work happening on this front, where a lot of cartoonists are tackling environmental issues in otherwise political columns or political spaces. So the discourse about politics has grown to include conservation and the politics of conservation more increasingly these days. Although I would like to see more of it coming from contemporary cartoonists and even writers, for that matter. As for the freedom of expression that an artist has in this country today, it is certainly diminishing, and there is a lot of pressure even from editors of platforms on the artist to be politically correct, and that goes against the ethos, the very founding ethos of cartooning. Political cartooning especially, was founded on the principle of questioning whoever has authority, unquestioningly. And I think that has a lot of pressure is being put on cartoonists to be diplomatic, which really doesn't go eye to eye with the principles of cartooning. So I think if we go back to a slightly more tolerant generation of readers that we used to be, I think we would see better cartoons coming out. Yeah.
Is there any more questions? If not, I have one. Okay. So, activism art is defined as something which is like rooted in important issues, talking about political and social issues. So, most of your cartoons deal with environmental governance. So in that sense, it is activism art, would you say?
I've never called myself an activist. An activist in this country gets shot on the streets. I don't have that kind of courage. I do the easy job. Yeah.
My question was like, there are like many misguided mega projects. So,
yes.
But then nowadays there are like more art blitz and Twitter storms related to art. So how important are there in the current scenario?
Honestly, I used to think that this doesn't make a difference until the draft TIA issue happened. You all must be knowing that there was a policy that was being passed in 2020 by the then Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar to scrap the process of environment impact assessment in the country, so that industries and corporations would more or less have a free hand in developing a piece of forested land, for example. So this happened around the time when the first COVID lockdown was in place, and a lot of the protests could not be held on streets. So people resorted to online protests. But again, the numbers were very, very small. And two of my lawyer friends wanted to make the issue larger, and they started tweeting the salient features of the policy. But again, nobody was engaging with their work either, because it was very technical. It was full of legal jargon. So I got together with them. I drew a comic strip, first understanding what the draft TIA issue means to a citizen like me, and then drawing a comic strip and putting it out for the internet to use whichever way they like. Eventually, that comic strip became one of the faces of the online movement against the draft TIA. And in 2-3 months, I think 6 lakh signatures were gathered from citizens, and it put the government on the back foot. And that's when I started believing in the power of cartoons, the power of various kinds of media coming together. Art, digital art, social media, even with a little bit of help from journalists and newspapers. All of this can help the cause of environment movements go a long way. So it definitely does matter in today's age.